the ones that never take their personal days, you could say they're using the system, but they're in the classroom. So it's the ones that it's like, am I going to take it to go fishing and make the district pay for a sub, or if I'm just going to be there? The way that I think they could have used it is if they say, hey, whenever I want to go fishing, I'm just calling sick, and then I save my personal days. There was talk of that.
Well, there was talk of some suggestion they threaten you sick leave.
Yeah, and people that are using their sick leave when they're getting close to retirement.
The other thing that you could do is you could say, well, we've set it at the substitute teacher rate. You could set it at $100 a day or $75 a day, or set it at $10. Set it at $10 an hour for hourly employees. You don't have to set it at the set rate. You could set it lower. We just started at the sub rate.
Charlie, you asked about the sustainability, and we said at 1.9. That is assuming some things. I mean, it's all projections, of course, but that's leaving revenue at what Sally's projecting for this year, right?
Right.
So if enrollment went up, then that revenue would increase. If enrollment went down, it would, you know. So there are some variabilities there. There's no sure way to know exactly the figures. I guess that's what I'm saying. Just keep that in mind too. And we get other input. I mean, you know, I don't know. I think everybody got the email from an employee just a little bit ago. I mean, you know, inflation is what, 9 to 10%, and people have figured out this isn't a full 10% raise. Well, yeah, we know that.
It's 8.97, but if you take away the insurance.
You figure 5 point something.
Yeah, that's what you take insurance away.
Yeah, insurance out.
And the other tough thing is that I'm sure we're not the only district that's thinking about changing the base, right? So even, I think Dana had a link to one of the other websites and their base salary. What we were talking about, was it you or somebody else that was there? It was Sally. Somebody on their website had what the teacher base salary and stuff is, and it had changed just since they looked at it.
Yeah, everybody's doing what we're doing.
Other districts. So it's like, yeah.
I think you may move up, and then all of a sudden you're in the same spot because everybody's doing what you've done. Right.
So.
What is the state average employee contribution to health insurance? You know, if we're going to move this to 5%, and there's only 6 that pay 100%, kind of wondering what the average is
For districts?
Yeah.
It's kind of all over the place.
We have that spreadsheet that showed, and is it enough?
You know that all you guys are just.
That showed how much.
Yeah.
I think it should be in that link or whatever that Dr. Copeland added to the box or whatever.
Well, we figured the daily rate, which is another factor that we hadn't brought up yet. But when you look at how many days are in our teacher contracts, that we're at 170, which the majority of districts are at 185. There's probably 2 or 3 districts that are less than 170. So if you figure out a daily rate, we're much more in the middle of what a teacher makes per day. Because, for example, Teton has the biggest salary. They have to work 187 days. He's still not enough to live there, obviously. But, you know, 187 compared to 170, that's another 2 or 3 weeks of work that we're not requiring in our contracts. So when you look at that, that puts us kind of in the middle if this goes through, at least this proposal goes through. But again, if everybody else raises theirs, it means that could change that.
And if you looked at, if you compare it to student-teacher ratio, you took out Teton because they were crazy high, you took out Flat 2 because they were the lowest salary in the state, then up at the 44,000 base teacher salary is exactly in line with the student-teacher ratio.
What are teachers required to work a year? Is that state?
No, there's no minimum state requirement for number of days. Because some 4-day weeks, some are on 5-day weeks.
Isn't there a minimum, isn't there?
The 185 was the minimum. That, anything you have less than the number of days of students, and that's teachers. You apply for the alternative calendar, which probably half of the districts are on a 4-day calendar. So they get an exemption from that number. That's why most of them are 185, because that's part of what they normally require.
So that's minimum that you have to be working, correct?
Right.
I mean,
Unless you get an alternative schedule approved, which we do. So
And then it goes by hours, student contact hours.
that students are out.
So if you can meet the minimum number of hours with less than 185 days, then you can ask for an alternative schedule. And I did have Dana attach the projection, steps, base 3,500, insurance 95.5, the spreadsheet that shows the 3-year projection. So if you back out of your back out of discussion, salary and benefits, and then go back into it, it's there now at the bottom.
As far as the insurance, I finally found where I had that, and this is based on websites and the WEA survey from this current year, and it ranges from 0, obviously, to all the way up to, for family of 7,500 a year. There's Rollins is right under 5,000. They pay $415 a month. Because one of the teachers we hired from over there was telling me that's how he could come over here for a less salary, because not only is he driving to Rollins, he was paying $415 a month for family insurance was his contribution. So you add all of those things in there, you know, you can't just necessarily go by base salary. You have to look at number of days worked, number of insurance requirements, all the other things. So
Yeah, definitely. And one of the questions that came up, which was a great question too, is that, all right, yeah, you know, Jason Williams, said about 10% inflation. Some of the people in the meeting brought that up. Well, same thing happens to school operational costs. You know, it's going to cost more to just do general everything that's non-staff. You know, so that's going to be a challenge to that budget. One of the things, and we'll talk about this later, I mean, I don't think there's going to be a huge ton we can do to address salaries unless there's less staff to pay or the legislature allocates more money for it. You know, there's only so many dollars, and this is already driving our savings down very uncomfortably. But I don't know about any of the rest of you, but we certainly had more staff come to us and be like, hey, this isn't sustainable. We'd like a raise. We'd like a raise for this.
well, if you knew your state funding was going to go up at the same rate of inflation, you'd be in a better spot to decide.
Right.
But there's no guarantee of that, and it's very unlikely that it's going to match inflation. And then it's just, you know, like James said, really costs us personnel. You know, long term, the only way this district is going to drastically reduce personnel costs is to have fewer people, which means combining classes in smaller campuses, and then having larger classes in the larger campuses than we have now. The difference, like Lincoln, I looked at Lincoln County because they're about our same enrollment. That's over at Kimmerer. Well, their beginning salary is $50,000, but they don't have outlying campuses. In other words, they can put more kids in a classroom because they all go to the same elementary school or the same high school, whereas we can't do that. You know, we have a teacher in Hannah for the 2nd grade, just like we would in Canton, and then we have 1, 2, or 3 at Saratoga, but they have less numbers of kids in Hannah and in Cameron, but that's just the way it is. I mean, we can't really do much about that. So we spread ours around. We have 3 activities programs for 3 different high schools as opposed to they have 1. And so that puts us over, say, for activities, whereas they may not be over.
And that's not just sports, that's FFA, that's
3 activities. And if all of our kids went to one campus, we could probably have one of those. We have programs that the number of enrolled in those those programs, probably in a bigger district would sustain keeping that program.
One thing that's real interesting to look at, if you guys have the projections tab open, she emailed that out, but I would say if you look back at like it's the percentage of our district funds that go towards salaries, FICA, and retirement, I think. If I
Health
make sure.
insurance.
What's that?
It includes health insurance.
And health insurance, okay, so it's employee costs, percentage of district's operational costs. If you look between 17, 18, 18, 19, that's 75.8%. It's in gray after salaries. Very bottom. Oh, maybe you gotta get back.
Well,
Anyways, it goes from like 76% of our district cost to like 86% going forward to 24, 25. So then what that means is, that just this big increase. So everything else can get squeezed.
Sorry.
We've trimmed in areas, activities, not, minimizing the overnight stays, the restaurants and stuff like that. But that's just a drop in the bucket when you're looking at 86% of your budget is salaries and benefits.
And right now, we're already moved up to between 21 and 22 was like 85%, so it's not a huge change to get to 86, because that's where all the money's at. Yeah. So it's not like there's much other stuff to trim. You've got to turn the lights on or else I'm not going to go to school, like he did. Anything else on this topic before we move on? We've got two other topics to try to cover this work session. We'll obviously have time more to talk about this in the general meeting. Okay. This is when the teachers can come in and general meeting and the principals can come in and speak up. Okay, let's move on to item B. Discuss student cell phone usage at school.
This actually came out of an 18 discussion, which came out of some other things that happened, but there really was a little bit of disagreement, I guess, among the principals as to what the best way forward was. And so I just thought this would be a good time to just throw it out there and see what the board would even back or not. I mean, cell phones, if you're looking at it strictly from an school administrator, you probably say, let's ban them all, ban, because they cause a lot more problems than they solve. But it's kind of like, the genie's a little bit out of the bottle. I don't know how that would go across. And maybe we just wanted to throw that out there to kind of discuss. And so that will come up again, whether we want to add anything in the handbook, which we approved at June meeting, about cell phones, any changes. So one of JD was kind of liking the idea of banning cell phones up through 8th grade. We took pros and cons about it, and Cameron didn't seem to be having the same types of issues, at least this week. The week we discussed it last week, I guess. And so I just thought, I thought they'll be here, they can tell you what they think about it, y'all can say what you think, and it's just one of those things that, there would need to be some support, and it probably, at least my advice would be that it would probably need to be the same in all campuses as opposed to just picking and choosing, but that's just my thought, I guess it would have to be. Anyway, principals, JD, you want to start by saying why you even thought this might be a good idea, because you were the one where it came from, because it's some issues you had to deal with over the last month.
It is. I think more and more I talk with parents and teachers and stuff, that the amount of time our kids, especially junior high students, they feel like these things are like their life. And the amount of time that they feel like they have to know what's going on every minute, or who's saying what to them, about them, all day. And, you know, if we allow them to have them with them, if that thing buzzes in my pocket, I guarantee the first second I get it, can I go to the bathroom? And it's not so much the classroom that we have issues with the cell phones, because teachers monitor that, you know, that type of thing. It's between the periods, it's at the lunch tables, it's going to the bathroom, it's that type of thing. And I think for our junior high kids, there's so much other distractions, that growth, all that kind of stuff going on. This is one more thing that is taken. As soon as that goes off in my pocket, I can care less what you're talking about as a teacher. I am finding somehow to get out of that class to figure out who sent what, who liked what, who wants to know what, and that's all they're focused on. And if we can take that temptation away from them, from 8 o'clock to 3:30, 3:45, whenever school's out, then they're focused on school, and that's where they should be. The amount of stuff Amy and I have had come through our office, you know, a lot of it takes place outside of school, which we can't control, but it's all that discussion outside, and then it's the little likes, or it's the little comments throughout the days that just constantly take our kids' attention for the day. I mean, it would be surprising to see how many of our junior high kids even, how much screen time, I guess they call it, even during the school day. And if they're on that, it's not doing research, it's social media. And social media right now, from bullying to sexting to just being mean and everything, it's becoming an issue. And I can't control after 4 o'clock, but I think we can make our schools a safer place for those kids to get away from that. And it's not just kids towards kids. You should have seen some of the emails that Amy and I saw that a parent was sending to their kid during school. And it's like, no wonder that kid, school's not a priority for them. But at least if we can take that out of their hands and off their mind for a little bit, school becomes more of a focus. And that's just, I think, I would love to go like Dr. Copeland said and go K-12, but also understand that we got to also teach these kids how to use them properly. You know, with our high school kids, there's a little more adult responsibility, so we say, when you're in high school. But also with some of our technology stuff and things like that, having their phones with them to look things up, to contact their college stuff, because some of the things we've got going on, you know, I think it would be a good start, at least for our junior high kids, that if we had no cell phone. I don't know, what do you think, Stephen? Mike? I mean,
All support wherever athletes have to go. We have board support, we have to realize that there'll be parents here, and we don't complain.
How would you, so you're not letting them keep them to school at all, is that?
The policies I've seen and some of the, so I think Cody does this, I believe, trying to think who else. Amy said she knew they were K-12. You know, it's out of sight, off. So they bring it to school, they put it in their locker. If I see it in your pocket, it's mine. If I see you from 8 o'clock to 3:45 when school gets out, if it's on you at any time, it's taken to the office. You have the responsibility of keeping it in your locker, and that's where it stays. If it's outside the locker, because if it comes out of the locker and you go to the bathroom, I can't control what you're doing. And we're right back to what we're at. So, you know, if you see it in the pocket and anything between 8 o'clock and 3:45 or whatever your school day is, it's not stated.
So what you're proposing is even if you pull it out at lunch or.
I'll tell you, Joe, I have more issues at lunch from cell phones and passing periods than I do during class. I would almost rather only be able to allow them in class than in the hallways, at lunchrooms, things like that. But then once again, if you still have them in class, they're gonna do some of that as well. But
I'll give you a little input. I brought this to the DAC, asking them what they wanted us to do the year that we met in person before COVID started. So that would have been 19 and 20. And at that time, a big thing was they had bags, which were called yonder bags. You put the phones in, and then the kids could keep them, but they couldn't take them out of the bag until they got the key for the bag at the end of the day. It cost like $12 a head. Du Bois High School and Pinedale High School were piloting that in the state at that time. It got absolutely no traction as DAC. The parents were not having it. They didn't want to talk about it. I heard comments like, we pay for a phone for our kid, we want our kid to have the phone, we want to be able to contact. So you got to understand, if you guys go this way, that's the stuff you're going to get. It's going to be a fight to do it. And I know JD's been having issues. I won't say that we don't have issues at campus school, but I've had it both ways. I've had it where we banned the phones and they had to keep them in their locker. If we had them, we saw them, we took them. And then now we let them pack them around. We have a sign in every secondary classroom that says personal electronic devices, yes or no. And that's flipped up or down based on the day and the teacher's discretion. Because you have to include in that, you know, the earbuds, the headphones, all those kind of things. Because you can't just, you know, you can't just say cell phones. You gotta say anything there. And I was worried about that when we started it, but it has worked out very well. And our experience is that our cafeteria is better for secondary lunch when they have their cell phones. They sit at the tables, yeah, they're on their phone during lunch, that's when they can do it. And they're messing around rather than going table to table and get loud and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, no matter what you do, you're gonna have problems. You gotta decide, you know, what you wanna do. I tried this, like I said, it was 3 years ago. I tried to bring it to the DAC, got absolutely nothing. And you got to have your staff that supports it as well, because they're going to have to help you. And I will say, for my staff, I don't think I'm going to get a lot of support on that. They like to have their devices close by. So, you know, other factors to consider there.
I'm just out of curiosity, if I can speak up, I'm curious because I know JD hinted at that too. How much of that is potentially influenced by our networks and restrictions and things like that? What are students able to log into versus what they're not able to log in? That's not to dig necessarily at a network, but I know, for example, that, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a certain amount of students have used their cell phones sometimes to access certain pieces online that we can't give them access through the network, that I can see an argument going that maybe they should have access to the network.
And does that at middle school? I mean, I can certainly appreciate that at high school level, but do middle school students get on their phone to get information?
Oh, son. Yeah, and Andy's pretty good. Would I rather have them have to email Andy or have them on their phones all the time? Trust me, I'd rather have them try to undo a blog for my junior high. You know, this isn't the first school doing this. I can tell you right now, there are a lot of schools that this is a concern, and it's not just the, the parents, of course. Yeah, I want to have contact with my kid. You know what? I have a phone there in the office. Shouldn't your kid be in class anyways?
The problem is, it's not that. Everybody agrees with that. It's the rules apply to who? Everybody but not me. And those are the parents that if we do this, you guys will be hearing from. So.
Yeah, and so I guess to pros, cons, I mean, of having each campus get to have their own say versus one district policy. You know, if everybody's the same. You know, a lot of things
But
would
we
give them
have
discretion.
we have a different group of kids though too. I mean, I know everybody says we always have to be the same, and
Well, I'm not-
this policy needs to be, but I can tell you that like the situations I have and the number of things coming through are maybe a lot more than what Mike does, just because of our our community. So I don't know if we always have to be the same. I don't
Well,
know.
if it's going in a handbook, it could be different, right, because each school.
Well, that's right, that's my question, yeah, I mean, do Dr. Copeland or principals, does it have to be the same?
I mean, it wouldn't have to be. I just know that I know that when I came, the goal was to try to get the handbooks consistent across schools so that parents would complain to JD, well, we don't have this rule, or they don't have the rule at Hannah or Cameron, or whatever. They can speak more to that if that's an issue.
The handbooks are not exactly the same because Saratoga is able to operate a partially open campus where we don't. You know, because if we had an open campus, where are they going to go at lunch anyway? You
The
know?
big items are kind of the same. The discipline code.
Yeah, everything, I mean, there's minor differences, but it is easier when your discipline code and all those things are the same or very similar.
Stuff like this, it makes it easier when it's the same, so we don't hear, well, you know, at Saratoga, they're allowed to have their phones, or, you know, at a camp, I heard they're allowed to have their phones and their headphones and things like this, and we're not up here. Well, you know what? I guess.
So it doesn't have to be, it's just that was the encouragement I got. Moving forward.
I'd say, yeah.
And even from the principals, they wanted to be more consistent.
You guys are just scholarship.
Here's a scholarship.
So Mike, you kind of leave it up to your teachers then?
No,
No,
within reason.
okay,
Okay, the handbook says they cannot have them out, but within certain class periods, in that classroom only, we put up a sign that says, if the default setting is no personal electronic devices. If there's a day when it is okay, they're doing research or something, they don't mind if they have headphones or whatever, then they can flip that to say yes. So there's a little bit of flexibility there. That's, the staff and I worked on that, like how do we do it? Because I wanted to be consistent, like when I go into classrooms to visit, I would see a kid with an earbud in and nothing being done. And I don't want to undermine the teacher by going in there and just, you know, cracking down on them when the teacher said, yeah, it's okay for today. Plus, we do have some instances in the past, we try to not have it now, but where like they were taking an online course in that classroom and not part of the regular class, so there's a little bit there. The handbook says no, it doesn't happen. That, you know, cell phones are supposed to be put away. But there's something in there unless the teacher deems it's okay. So that's what we did, we put the sign up for everyone to see, so it's clear. If I walk in the classroom, the sign says no, and I see someone, the teacher hasn't seen them, I get out.
Aaron also had some comments he might want to make, say something, since he's going to anyone with along the board facing anything that comes out of this.
If they were good comments, can you repeat those? I may not be able to repeat those again. No, I don't know, it's, if I had my way, I would also ban social media for kids in that age group. I would say they can't get any social media 24 hours a day. But the reality is, it's part of our life, part of the kids when, you know, growing up, it's part of it. And, you know, so I didn't deal with a lot of cell phone issues because if there was a problem, I just took the cell phone and I told the parents, guess what, they don't get a phone in the school. And so in our handbook already says that, you know, if there's any value in a cell phone, let's leave it in the hands of the kids that can make good choices. That's kind of my opinion. But again, I would support a ban of cell phones, but if there's a problem as a principal, I have the right, based on our handbook, to deal with that problem and to take the phones away.
JD, I remember when you came and interviewed, and that was one of the things you said is you like all the doors or something that have no cell phones, you know, in the classroom when they come in, they put it, I really like that. Still, as a parent, I still do. Especially,
like I
junior
said,
high,
it's
but
not the classroom that's the problem.
it's the rest of the day.
It is the entire rest of the day. And if you allow them in the classroom, for me, they're gonna have them on them and be in the bathroom with them.
One of the things we did to help us with that too is we changed our bell schedule. So we only have 2-minute passing periods. So that they have to go quickly in between. They have to go to their class, ask to go back to the bathroom or their apartment. So I don't know, that's when we put up the signs and all that, because this is something we work with. We kind of come to a pretty good equilibrium at the gamut, but it's always an issue in the back of my mind, and that's why I brought it up to the DAC, because I wanted to know what the parents thought. Were they going to support it? Because there's instances where that cell phone is invaluable. When you're taking activity out and you're coming back, you know, we hit Saratoga and we're coming from the north. Everybody, call your parents right now. We're going to be at school in 20 minutes. They need to be there to pick you up. It's great, but you know, there's good and bad here.
You know, it's not even a school building either, that's traveling.
Two of the biggest problems that we got with cell phone riot is number one, bullying each other. And number two is all these cheat sites that now they have that these kids, when they're, for some reason, I know about this on a math class, but when they're in a math class, they can get on a cheat sheet and there's their answer. And so we're not teaching the kids, the only thing we're teaching the kids to do is look on cheat sheets. So I'm with you guys, I would just assume we don't have them, but again, this is 2022.
Right.
So we're saying
Like the toothpaste out of the tube already, I don't know.
yeah.
Mike said something that the argument's been, you know, each campus should have their own policy or handbook. But Mike said, you know, consistency is what you gotta do. So I think if we're consistent with our leadership, it's gonna go back through this. I don't think we need to end the fight. You know, Mike said that you're gonna have to fight our games. Well, I'd just soon fight once and fight 3 or 4 different times.
And then with that, you know, I would rather have the fight against with us instead of hanging these guys and the teachers out to dry.
What did the parents, when you had issues at school, did you call the parents and how did they respond?
Some of them took their kids' phones away. Some of them agree, but then they don't want to be the bad guy and take their phones away. I think parents try to do the best they can with allowing kids. We don't, just like parents, we don't always know what's going on with our kids on those phones. And as well as at school, we think they're playing games. I guarantee it's not, because we've had cases. It shows their timestamp of when they sent it and all that, and they're not doing what they should have done. I don't know. Like I said, it's one of the things. If our purpose in our buildings are to educate and provide a safe environment for them, social media is not a safe environment for them.
One thing that helped us with our parents, and we need to promote it again, but we promoted it when we first got our school district. And because the parents can get it as well, they get a discount on it for their parent account. And Bark allows parents to monitor their kids' phone and all the apps and everything that their kids get on. And I can tell you as a parent, it works really well, sometimes too well, because it'll tell you when your kid is watching Randy Newber Hunter YouTube channel and flag it for violence, because they're watching things that have weapons. That's not really violence and weapons, but that's what it flags it. But it also will monitor their text messages, it will monitor if they have social media, anything like that. We have a lot of parents signed up for that because it allows them to monitor that without picking up the kid's phone and reading their phone. It gives them those alerts and everything. So we have really good results with that. We need to send it out again, because we've had, new influx of parents and so forth, but I think that's helped us to an extent. There is no silver bullet for anything.
Because you look what the parents do with their phones. Do they put their phones down at the appropriate times and pay attention? Or do they stay on their phones all the time? And if that's what they're, modeling for their children. Yeah, so.
That part is hard though so I try to do that, like, it's for parents that really want to, like, you have to spend some time, like, figuring out their passwords and doing all, like, you have to do it with your kids. I tried to do it and then I didn't because I thought, oh, they better just be better at whatever. I'm gonna have to trust them because I'm not putting all their passwords and all of that. So it was very cumbersome to do for parents, but I understand that it's a good tool for some, but probably the parents that need it for their kids are probably the parents that aren't gonna do it for their kids.
And once again, to me, that's a parent thing. 4 o'clock to 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. That, you parent your kids and you monitor and all that. I just want to I want my kids to be focused on school, not worrying about who's saying what's being said, that type of stuff, the different things that go on. I know there's no way we're going to control the bullying, because most of it happens after school, but at least if I don't have kids worried who said it, who did this, from that 8 o'clock to 3:45 time period, maybe we can focus more on our academics than what the world is.
So currently are all of them the same? I'm looking at the payments handbook right now. Are they all the same?
And I just shared mine with you. I don't know if you got it.
Yeah.
I shared mine, and on page
11,
I
context
highlighted
is the
how
same.
I changed it.
First time they get the phone back at the end of the day, the second time parents got to come get it, the third time they come to category 2 offense. They have their phones out.
I know ours was the same when it comes to the teachers allowing it if they want to. I am going to steal their idea with the sign, if they allow the use. Because I like that idea.
It just made it easier for me when I don't know.
But then would we just be putting the teachers in the line of fire? So if you got, JD, you don't want cell phones in your classroom, but Steve, you allow it, everybody's gonna come hunt for JD.
And the reason we do that is because, like, some teachers will allow them to listen to they're typing a paper or something. And I don't want to tell a teacher, no, you can't allow kids to listen to music while they're typing a paper.
Because it's their everything. I mean, now they even have their watches that are connected to their phones. So when you get into that, then are you gonna make them have their watches in there? That's fine. Plus, like, anytime, like, my middle schooler doesn't like to use her phone but her class is is part of the problem after school. And some of the stuff they've been doing on their phones as a mom would be very upsetting, especially because they're doing it at school, because they get that herd mentality. They all get together and giggle and think it's funny at lunch to send out something to somebody or to the boys or whatever. But I like more of what Mr. Erickson has done, just for the fact, like, Shelby had to go get her phone one day because her teacher, they can lock them out of their computers in class so they can't access stuff during class, and then that teacher didn't unlock it and she could use it in the next class type of thing. But I think it's a fine line. I think it's hard to.
So JD, is this your proposed?
So what I emailed out, what is green? So what has strikes through it is what the policy says right now. And so basically, it's the exact same policy for the 9th through 12th grade. And then what's green is just how I changed it. So high school, 9 through 12 is basically the exact same wording that was prior to the striked out. And then I added a different little wording at the top, and then my 6th through, the 6th grade is coming up, so that's why I put 6th through 8. how I would propose, what I would like in my
As a parent of a coming seventh grader, I would love that. I don't think he should be on, mine doesn't have a phone. He doesn't need one, there's one in the school office, at the elementary school, he can use it. But I have, my kids' cell phone use is very different than parents' kids' cell phone use and our interaction with them. And that's just an example of, I think they should be out of recess playing and jumping and running around and not checking their cell phone. But so I personally would be like, yeah, good, that's a no-brainer. But everybody has that, and every parent's gonna be a different opinion on that.
Well, they all have to sign the handbook at the start, so I say whatever we decide, and they signed it, and that's what we're stuck with.
You've got to enforce it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
What is the, JD, what is the rest of your staff besides, I mean, you and Amy, sounds like maybe dealing with more, but how is the rest of the staff dealing with this issue?
I would say most of them, especially my junior high teachers, completely support that. Just because they constantly, I don't know how many weeks ago, and I know there's another situation I got going that has gone into this whole bathroom thing and all that in my building right now, but it's a constant thing. And the amount of drama that is brought about from cell phones, especially the junior high level. There's not a thing they couldn't do on their Chromebook, except maybe listen to music. But if I was a teacher and wanted kids to hear music while we were typing, today we're going to listen to this kind of music and I'll turn it on for you. You know, if we're going to have background noise, that's how I would handle it as a teacher. If I wanted music to be played or something. But you know, the other part as an admin watching it too, you know, sometimes I think our teachers use it as a crutch a little bit as, oh, you got 5 minutes left or 10 minutes, just go do whatever you want to do, and they're on their phones. Well, we need to be pushing more stay on task type stuff too. And it takes away maybe, I don't want to call it that, kind of the babysitter device.
I have a seventh grader this year, and I think having him up there has been really enlightening to me. I think there have been so many challenges when it comes to social media and just kids being mean to each other. And not even necessarily about him, but just all of the kids. And I think if there's any way to try to minimize that outweighs any of the benefits in my mind. And the other thing that I think is really important is I have no doubt that my kids are going to know how to communicate with their devices. But I do worry about them having good communication skills, even with their peers and their teachers, and being able to sit at a lunchroom table and act, you know, responsibly, and just have that communication and be able to talk to their classmates in person. And if they want to say something, they just have to say it in person. So as a parent, I would be in support of something for especially the middle school students.
So the handbooks, you guys have to come out with them in June? Is that?
I think they're pretty much done. I think they will be this month.
They're always approved. They used to be done in May just because they were printed, but now that they're all electronic, we can easily make a change.
I guess, yeah, so my real question is, so where are you looking to go from here? I mean, where is it?
Well, we were thinking we'd bring the handbook back in June. Yeah. And depending on this discussion, we can add it or not add it and see if it gets approved, I guess. But we were just kind of wondering knowing that it's a little bit of a touchy subject with some, we just wanted to make sure we were close to being on the same page, I guess.
I like Mike's topic before about talking to the DAC, you know, and talking to another group. That's very hard to do in a month's time. I like having that input.
Can we send out a survey?
The other thing, I guess my other input is if JD felt strongly about this for Saratoga Middle High School and the other schools didn't, I wouldn't care. If it's different, if you're like, this is our policy and this is what we think we want to try for a year, the others don't want to try it.
Yeah, and the way the handbook, like how looking at payments, kind of leaves it up to the administrators and the teachers a little bit, like there's a little bit of flexibility. But it's up to them whether they're allowing things or not.
Ultimately, almost all discipline things give some discretion to the administrator. I'm sure there's some.
Yeah, it says sole discretion.
I wouldn't think it would be as big a deal for middle school kids. I mean, if you were doing it across the board for high school kids, like I communicate probably more with my high school kids, just like pick up dog food or something. Not that they necessarily even have to read that, but middle school, I don't know what they're doing on their phone, but so minus, unless your plans change or something like that, but I don't know what middle schoolers are doing. I wouldn't see that it would be critical for them to have that. I don't know.
Cell phone use kind of falls into that whole, it's like the attendance stuff.
Yeah.
You have a lot of personal things like, I want to do it this way, this is what should happen. But when it comes to enforcement, it's very, very problematic. You want to get yourself in a position where you're trying to enforce something that's tough, and that's all you spend your time doing is enforcing that. And that's what I felt like early on when we banned cell phones, is that I was a cell phone police. It's like, first year of COVID, we were the mask police. So we've kind of come to that, at least at our school, something that works pretty good for us.
And that's what would make me not want to say, y'all have to be the same, because you seem comfortable, so.
Right, and just like JD says, though, different students, different dynamic.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly.
But you want to have something that doesn't take all your time trying to enforce.
I think it's gonna come back anyway, because there'll be parents over here or over in Hannah or wherever, they're gonna say, well, the Cameron allows their students to, why can't our students? So we're gonna get that.
We have open enrollment. You can take your kids to whatever school you like.
There's no scholarships.
There's no fuel scholarship.
Yeah, JD is in the hole. Scholarships.
Yeah, there'll be some of that. Life's not fair, so.
I know, I think it does make it easy though, like, as if you had not saying that we would yet, but have a policy that's consistent across the board. I think that's what helped. I mean, common calendar, common everything, which may not be like a full out ban. I don't necessarily look like a full out ban of anything, because I think there's always wiggle room. But I think when we're consistent across the board, it makes it easier for, it's just like, that's how it is. There's no,
But
have people.
if we do give them wiggle room, they're going to wiggle. It either has to, in my mind, 100% yay or 100% nay.
Well, but Mike's plan is, I would say, has wiggle room.
Well, with the teachers, yeah.
But also, I don't know, could you not let them take them to lunch?
Junior high, I want to let them take it to lunch.
I mean, can you just, even if he's without,
Karen, if you walked around during lunch and saw some of the stuff going on.
I've seen some of the stuff going on.
That's-
I don't want to see some of the stuff going on. I've heard some of this, and that's, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of it. I always worry about flat out this happening at one campus and not being across the board and just flat out banning it, just how people will react.
I'd be more happy to talk.
I know you would.
It's funny, kids and stuff like that. It's a short example. So Aspen, my 9th grader now, was using too much screen time. It was like 4 hours a day, 4.5. I got it so I can track it. And I'm like, instead of it was like, all right, here's your goal. I need you to be at an hour and a half. I'm gonna take your cell phone. It was that the next day. And it's consistently stayed there. It was a self-monitoring. It's like, here's a metric. I'm gonna look at, I don't even look at it now, but it's like, she dropped it by a third in one day, but that's just willpower, and
Well, I don't think they realize
I
it's a
set
habit.
a goal where I told her this goal. Before it was just use less means nothing, but I set a goal, I was like, okay, I can meet that goal.
I think a lot of it is, so if you've ever looked at TikTok, like it's mindless stuff.
Oh,
I
it's
once
such
sat
a-
there for an hour and I didn't even realize I sat there for an hour, because you just swipe up and look at it and you don't, I mean, I don't think they realize how much they probably spend their time on their phone just doing mindless stuff.
Anything else to say, JD?
I would like the support of how I put in my junior high part. And if the other campuses, if it's working what they're doing, I'm fine with discussing with parents, because pretty much every parent that gets brought in because of the cell phone issue, a lot of them don't realize what they're doing, and it's a thank you type thing. I appreciate that type of stuff. So I don't mind having those conversations with parents if that's what it leads to.
And since this is a work session, there could be no action taken by the board. You just have a discussion, but you're not gonna get to
So what I will do though is, I'm gonna propose my handbook next month with the junior high. Unless somebody outside says, hey, you might not.
Jace Westry shouldn't have it.
That's right.
The bad. But there is,
Do you think that it might go over smoother if, when you put out the handbook, or just at the end of the year or something, send out something and just explain the increasing problem that we've been having at the school?
So at the beginning of the year, anytime we have any, even like, so the lunch thing will be in it, any lunch handbook changes, I make a separate sheet of paper with all the big differences, because no parent reads the handbook, I can tell you that.
I read the handbook, I read all of
Oh,
it.
okay, Karen does. But most of them, most kids don't. So
Highlighting
anything-
is really good.
Anything that is kind of a change, like our lunch this next year and this, anything like that, it goes out, so parents.
It's one of the policies, you're supposed to go through it with the students.
And then we do that, for parents to know that there is a change. I would like for them to know.
well, it's like probably, you might be worth $3,500 more next year. Got a $3,500 idea. Okay, let's move on so we have time to talk about item C.
And this is, again, this isn't a decision or anything, it's just kind of making sure everybody understands the data and the numbers and so on. So, Laura's put together some numbers, and I think she just emailed the item again, make sure everybody had the latest. So, yeah, I'm looking at it right now. So right now at Medicine Bow next year, we're projecting 7 students if it stays K5 or K6 1. Dog Mountain 3. The 7 students, those schools are funded on a 1 teacher per 7 student basis, all the way down to 1 student, 1 teacher. So in other words, in the past, when we had 12 or 14 or above students at Medicine Bow, if it was 14, they funded 2 teachers. If it was 12, they funded almost 2 teachers. If it's 7, they're going to fund 1 teacher. Just like at Elk Mountain's funded 1 teacher for the last several years, because they've been 7. So just looking at the numbers and the projections, it doesn't, the Medicine Bow funding is not going to support 2 teachers. So that brings the question of how many grade levels can 1 teacher prep for? And in looking at the numbers now, and Laura can correct me if I say anything wrong or incorrect, but it looks like we'll have, are these numbers this year's grades or next year's grades?
These are next year's.
Okay, so these are next year's grades. So we're going to have 2 first graders, 3 third graders, 1 fourth, and 1 fifth. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4 preps of all the subjects for 1 teacher. So that seems not very academically wise. So our choices basically are to make both campuses, K2, K3 campuses. We've talked about moving 6th grade over for some time. We haven't officially done it, but there hadn't been very many 6th graders the last couple of years. It didn't matter. But, we had an issue, well, not an issue, but we had a situation when I first came where we had several 6th graders at both campuses that we provided them transportation for activities and all of that stuff. So we had talked about moving 6th grade over. We just never officially did because we ran out of 6th grade, basically. So just wanted to answer questions and talk a little bit about, this proposal probably will come next month also, just to propose that we, looking at it and talking with Laura, we'd probably say K3. That would leave 5 students at Medicine Bow and leave the 3 at Elk Mountain. Now, all of this is projections, of course. There could be a family of 8 moving in tomorrow. We don't know that. But also, this is projected by the kids that Laura and them have communicated with that are planning right now, that, as we know, to go to the schools. How that could change, for example, 2 of the students at Elk Mountain are real good friends. They're 2 girls. If one were to decide to go to Hannah, probably the other one would, according to Laura's just they're not saying that right now. But it just shows you when you get down to these numbers what could happen. One student here. The same thing could happen in Medicine Bow, whatever. But if we went to K3, that's going to mean that 2 students that would have gone to Medicine Bow next year will go to Hannah, because there would be 1 4th grader and 1 5th grader. So it really would only affect 2 students. Now the caveat, I think one of those students has a younger brother or sister. Is that correct?
No.
No?
Not for the K3 option. If we went to K2 option, that's when we run into the sibling situation.
So one of the, K3, if we had a bunch of students, if we did that going forward, you potentially could have 4 grades again. Not with these numbers, but you could have 1, 1, 1, 1, 4 grades. You could.
Yes.
The other, I guess you would kind of keep, if we didn't say just in Medicine Bow, for example, the next year, if all the students stayed, it was good, we didn't have any kindergartners, there wouldn't be any reason you couldn't do a K4, because you'd only do 2 grades still. But
you could decide what I guess
maybe I'm saying there's like a limit. We're not going to do more than like 3 grades or something.
You can base it on the kids and the grades are
prep for. Because if you say K3,
well, you're not going to officially change a lot, right? Or like Sally said, what was it you suggested?
You just try it for a year or 2.
I guess
the natural break this year would probably be K3, just because that leaves 5 students and 2 grade preps.
But next year that might be 1, 4.
And we can always change out of it. So let's say that we have 2 families move in with 8 kids, they don't homeschool, which would be strange.
Which would be strange.
Very here. Yes, and then all of a sudden, we can put them back into schools, now we're back to a K6.
Right. The other,
We're not changing the official configuration of the schools from K6.
Okay.
You just, as a board decision, saying that you're going to engage kids in these grades this year, but you're not officially changing the configuration of the schools. Because it'd be the same as what you have at Saratoga with the 6th grade. You haven't changed the configuration of the elementary to K5 and the high school to 6-12. You're just moving the 6th grade up to the high school and trying that for a couple of years. Eventually, if they stay there, you're going to have to do official reconfiguration and change a couple of years just to try it out, make sure it's working.
If we don't say that we're going to reconfigure anything, but do we ever run the risk for this school example, if we have 3 kids in here, do we run the risk of having any of the facilitators committee come in here and say you have too much square footage for the amount of kids that you have to mothball part of this, or like we have in the past, with our original school? Is that gonna be an issue?
I don't believe so, though.
They're not doing that right now, but you're right, they have done that in the past. The other piece of data that just to kind of make sure everybody's aware of is that spreadsheet with the numbers on it. And basically, that is the personnel that's on there now, so it would change a little bit. But right now, looking at the numbers from Sally, the revenues would total about about 400,000, a little over that, that these two schools would bring in, leaving them just like they are, right, Sally? And the expenditures would be above what we're getting, probably for the first time. Now, one thing that would change is you still got the 2 teachers at Medicine, which would go to 1. So it would be more of about a break even.
So with this,
right now.
that funding would change if the ADM.
As the ADM goes down, that funding.
I mean, if we went into the only K3 next year, that changes?
No,
The
that's-
funding's already been set.
Yeah, the funding won't change until you reconfigure.
Change the allowance officially through the.
To do an official reconfiguration. Now, your funding is gonna stay the same. You can look at Elk Mountain's funding, and it's gonna be the same for 4 kids as it is gonna be for 7 kids, or 1 kid, or 2 kids. That funding's gonna be the same, and you can look at that for Medicine Bow and say, okay, Medicine Bow, the funding's gonna be the same as Elk Mountain, if you have 7 kids.
In a couple of years, it definitely will be with
Or
the
if you have 4
3-year
kids, or if you have 3 kids. The funding's gonna be the same because you're funded on a 1 to 7, and you have a minimum teacher of 1.
Minimum principal.
And an assistant principal. Now, assistant principal funding is for, to take care of your secretary, your principal.
Right, we use it for other stuff.
Yeah.
So we just kind of wanted to let everybody see the numbers and where everything is, and we probably will come back in June, and I'm open to any input anybody wants to give me now or between now and then, but coming back with a suggestion of, what we think makes the most. It's just gonna be a stretch to have one teacher be able to do preps for, all those grades. And it's pretty hard to.
If you do this, you have a spot for that teacher somewhere else.
She's coming here. So we've already done that because of the proposed numbers, we knew we weren't gonna be able to sustain 2 separate teachers. So Annie is actually coming here, she will be the lead teacher here next year. And because Heather Jones transferred to Hannah to our open first grade position. So, yeah, I did my very best to preserve all jobs that I could, while still, fitting within the funding that we have.
What does that do as far as the aides, the cooks, the janitors,
So right now, we have 1 part-time custodian in each building. We have 1 cook's helper at each building. Right now, the cook's helper at Medicine Bow only does lunches, and Courtney typically does breakfasts. But I put it in my proposed classified to up their hours so they would do breakfast as well. Because of Courtney needing to split, partly because of that coverage piece, because we try to keep 2 adults in the building at all times for obvious reasons, safety reasons, so we don't have a para all the time or something like that. Having Courtney in the buildings is helpful, having the cooks in the buildings, just so that we're never down to just 1 adult.
In Medbo, because of, the kids that we would be talking about would still have mostly a sped teacher.
Yeah,
and
right now,
sped
based on the
para.
kids we would have 1 sped para here and 1 sped para at Medicine Bow, and 1 sped teacher split between the 2. But both of those para positions are one-on-one para positions. So if either one of those kids move out of district,
You have to reevaluate.
yeah, we have to relook at whether we continue to.
So if we do this in the bow, do we have enough resources to cover the needs of the kids over there?
If we go K3?
Yes.
Yes, because again, we only have 2 classrooms.
Okay.
So we have the first grade classroom and the 3rd grade classroom. the first grade classroom does have the one-on-one student, that has the para. So, between the sped teacher, the classroom teacher, and the sped para, I feel like they would be able to rotate kind of coverage and stuff in order to be able to give all of the kids the benefits that they need.
And with 5 kids, you can combine some of the days, or a lot of the
Right.
days, depending on the lesson and what was going on.
So when you look on that budget sheet, top portion, basically, the difference, you would delete that, Elk Mountain open position of 86,508. So that gets it just under 400,000, and if we do bumps up, then it's stacked to 400,000, basically compared to the funding of 412.
It's about a
It's
break,
about,
close to a break.
they're a wash now, basically. Close.
The alternative is if we kept it K5 or K6, I feel like the only way we could keep the educational part even semi-even would be to hire an additional classroom aide. But then we're really hiring an aide because the teacher still has to do the practice. And so it's just hiring more bodies, but it's not necessarily helping those kids' education. Not as much as having 2 teachers, but then we don't have the funding for 2 teachers off the block, so.
So those, the 4th and the 5th graders, do they live in town?
Yes, they do both right now.
And so they, it's not like they have a 20-mile bus ride from somewhere else to town,
No,
to Manhattan.
no.
No, it'd be about a 22 bus ride to Hannah.
17.
17, whatever it is.
Well, we've already got the bus going anyway.
Yeah, I was just asking to make sure they weren't like.
Way on the far side.
They were up at the Shamrock or the
Right,
Heward or
on the bus
something,
for 40 minutes.
you know, then it becomes super long day.
Yeah.
So just wanted to throw all this out and let you know I'll be coming back with a recommendation.
And then you look like you get 4th grade in Hannah would be like 13 kids, and 5th grade would be like 7 kids.
Yeah, if we go the K3 option, it would up each one of those by 1. And I highlighted if we went the K2 option, it would up them up 3rd grade by an additional 3. My concern with the K2 option is that we do have a pair of siblings, and one is a 3rd grader next year and one is a 1st grader next year. And I don't see the parents splitting them, so if we send the 3rd grader, the 1st grader goes, and then we're literally left with 1 sped student in the building, which then we have to deal with.
We're not sure if they're looking at it.
I did get a hold of the WDE about that, like if it comes to where they have only sped kids in class or it comes to something like that, or in school, what would that look like? And they said, it's kind of a, I don't know, double-edged sword, I guess, because with SPED, you have to ensure that they're with their non-disabled peers as much as possible, but you also are supposed to be trying to keep them in their home school as much as possible. So she said that we should probably err on the side of keeping them with their non-disabled peers. So if we had to choose one, we would want them in a school with not just SPED, which would be less than that.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Okay, nothing else for the, any more questions about that? Okay, I am going to adjourn this work session so that we can, some of us can do Bill's committee, and is there a tour or something?
Just down there, I'm sure everybody saw the playground.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Go look at the playground.